Hello students, welcome to another session of the same chapter. The previous session we saw about the functional units, that is of the kidneys and the excretory system, and we also studied about what are the different parts of the nephron. Now in this particular session we are going to look at the process of excretion and is excretion necessary in plants. So these two will be our topics. Now coming to the subtopics for today. What are the steps followed during excretion? That will be our first subtopic. So we will learn how the excretion takes place in different phases and what is the composition of urine and why it is necessary to form in that particular way. Now the third one will be what happens in patients when a kidney fails to do this particular function and how can such patients survive without the kidneys. Now what happens in plants? Can we see excretion in plants? Now these will be the 4 subtopics for today. Coming to the first one, the previous session we already knew what are the different parts of the kidney. So we have seen the nephron and the kidneys. Now on the screen is the nephron, which is a functional unit of a kidney. Now we have studied that it has the Bowman's capsule and glomerulus. Together we call it as a Malpighian body. Now the second one will be the proximal convoluted tubule. Then we have the distal convoluted tubule and the loop of Henle. Now all these parts we have seen in the previous session. Now what exactly happens during the phase of excretion and how urine is formed? We will be looking at 3 different subtopics. The first one is the glomerular filtration. The second one is the selective absorption, reabsorption and the tubular secretion. We will divide the phases into 3 different steps. Now glomerular filtration, as the name suggests, glomerular filtration occurs in the glomerulus of the nephron. Now as the ultrafiltration takes place, the plasma and the bigger molecules will not be filtered through this glomerulus. So when we talked about the glomerulus, we did say that the glomerulus cannot filter the macromolecules as well as certain kinds of proteins. Now once the glomerular filtration is done, the filtrate will reach the PCT. Now, how much is the content we are looking at the glomerular filtration? So, 180 liters of blood is filtered so that the entire process gives an output of 1 to 1.5 liters of urine. So, you can see that there is a lot of filtration here. From 180 liters of blood to be filtered, the output will be 1 to 1.5 liters of urine. So, most of the substances which are all absorbed and reabsorbed happens in the uriniferous tubule, that is the PCT, that is the proximal convoluted tubule, the loop of Henle as well as the distal convoluted tubule. Now, what is selective reabsorption? Selective reabsorption is the uriniferous tubule does not reabsorb all the contents throughout its process. So, different areas of the PCT and the loop of Henle you will find and the distal convoluted tubule, we see that various kinds of substances are absorbed and then filtered. All these occurs in a step-by-step process. Now, when we look at the proximal convoluted tubule, the maximum absorption takes place in PCT. Almost like 70 to 80% of the electrolytes as well as the water are all reabsorbed in PCT. Proximal convoluted tubule. Now, as the filtrate goes down through the loop of Henle, so the loop of Henle will have its various parts. Some of the parts are permeable to water and some of them are permeable to the salts which are all reabsorbed. Now, what are the water? Why are we saying here water and salts? Because the concentration of the urine has to be made in such a way that it has the proper amount of filtered salts as well as water. So the dilution is very, very important as it goes down through the selective absorption. And now what are the substances we are all talking about? We said reabsorb. So this one, the filtrate contains glucose, amino acids, the sodium and the potassium ions, and even a little bit of the other substances, the proteins. We all see that in the filtrates. Now these substances are all reabsorbed and then they are given out through the urine. Some of them are all excreted here. Now the excretion part happens only with the constitution, that is the amount of salts which have to be absorbed or removed from the process will actually be understood only when the urine formation occurs. If the concentration of the salts are lesser, then there will be reabsorption. If the salts are more, then it will be filtered out. So vice versa it happens, so that the filtrate has all these kinds of process. Okay. Now coming to the tubular secretion. Now this one is the reabsorption part. After that, as the filtrate goes through the distal convoluted tubule and to the collecting ducts, if there is necessity of more amount of water, that all is excreted through this particular process. Now that is a DCT, or the distal convoluted tubules. Now the urine is collected through the collecting ducts and then it is passed on to the ureters at the junction, as we know the parts, at the junction of the pelvis region of the kidney and also at the region of hilum where the ureters open. Now the ureters take this filtrate urine to the urinary bladder where it is stored for a particular period of time. So once there is a signal from the central nervous system for the evacuation of urine from the body, then the urethra helps in evacuating that particular urine from the body. Now the evacuation needs two sphincters. We are talking about sphincters in the urinary bladder and the urethra. So because the sphincters will help to evacuate or remove the urine content from the urinary bladder. Now sphincters are very important because the urinary bladder has a capacity of storing for some time, but after a certain period of time, almost like when it is 70% to 80% full, there is a signal from the central nervous system to remove the urine or evacuate the urine from the urinary bladder. Now all these occur in a systematic mode and systematic process. Coming to the next one, what exactly urine has and what is the composition of urine? Now urine is generally little or slightly acidic with a pH level of 6. 6 is the pH level of urine. Now urine is slightly yellowish in color. It is yellow in color because of a pigment called urochrome. Now this urochrome gives that yellowish color and it has a pungent odor. So we find urine has a typical odor or a pungent smell, and this urine contains whatever we have seen, which are all removed from the body: excess of salts, glucose, proteins, excess of water, everything is removed from this particular. And remember, 70 to 80% of urea is filtered through urine. So urea has to be removed from the body. If it stays in the body, it gets toxic. So 70 to 80% of urea is also filtered through the process of filtration through urine. Now this will be the composition of urine, and the process by which urine is removed from the body is called micturition. It's called as the micturition, that is the removal of urine from the body, and the process of evacuation we call it as micturition. Now urine, the composition and all these here. And coming to, is it the only, we are talking about the nitrogenous waste which are removed from the body? It's not so, because we have some other organs which also do the process of excretion. We have the skin first. Skin excretes urea, little bit of urea, lactic acid and salts also, and skin removes sweat. So it is a cooling process and also an excretory organ. Now what about the sebaceous glands? Sebaceous glands are all present below the skin and different areas of the body. And what does it excrete? It excretes oil or sebum and a little bit of hydrocarbons also. Now liver, basic process by which the cholesterol, the biliverdin, bilirubin, when we studied about the digestive system, we said the bile juices contain this biliverdin and bilirubin. Now these are also excretory products from the liver. Along with cholesterol, And if you have more drugs or vitamins in the body, that is also removed from the liver. Now, these are all the excretory products from liver. Now, coming from lungs, we all know lungs excrete carbon dioxide, and the salivary glands also remove a little bit of nitrogenous waste from the saliva. Now, these are all the extra organs which are there for excretion in our body. Now, what is this hemodialysis? What are we seeing on the screens? So, we already said that if the kidney doesn't do the function properly, then the patients or the person who cannot have this natural method of excretion will have to undergo a process called hemodialysis. Now, what is hemodialysis? Another name for hemodialysis is artificial kidney. And why do we say artificial kidney? Because the natural kidneys do not work here. Now, there is a particular process which is being done. You can see the patient has two different openings here, two different blood vessels are being used. One is the renal vein and the other one is the renal artery. Okay, so this blood, whatever the excretion does, the same thing happens in this particular hemodialysis. Now, this machine is called, the system is called as a dialyzer machine, and this one takes the blood through the renal artery, where it is sent through a selectively permeable membrane made up of a cellophane material. Now, once the process is done, that blood is transferred through this particular cellophane substance, so that the nitrogenous waste are removed from the blood and transferred to the dialyzing solution. There is always a fresh dialyzing solution. It is the composition of the entire process is similar to that of plasma. So, we will see that the plasma, whatever is present in the plasma, the same way all the pH levels and the contents are all maintained here. The difference between plasma and this dialyzing solution is that plasma does not contain nitrogenous waste, whereas this dialyzing solution will have the nitrogenous waste which is removed through this particular process. Once the nitrogenous wastes are removed, the purified or the whatever excretory products are removed, the fresh blood is transported back to the patient. Now, this process occurs sequentially. Now, whenever this process is occurring, we have to understand that the blood cannot clot during this process. For stopping the clotting of the blood, heparin is used, and heparin is an anticoagulant which helps the blood to stay in that fluid condition. The same heparin which comes from the liver, similar way this is used so that the blood doesn't clot here. The same thing what that heparin does in a natural way, we are bringing it in an artificial way. Now, this is done in patients where the kidneys fail to do this particular excretory process, so that it gives them that comfort of getting excreted from the body. Now, this is all about the hemodialysis. Now, coming to what are the various disorders of excretory system. Now, what are the disorders we are talking about here? The first one is the most common, which we call it as the kidney stones. Now, kidney stones are all small structures, small stone-like structures or sand-like structures made up of oxalate crystals. Extremely painful, abdominal pain, where you commonly see it as kidney stones. Now, uremia, if the excretory product or the urine has more excess of urea, it is called uremia. Now, excess of ketone bodies, then it is ketonuria. If there is excess of glucose in the blood or glucose in the urine, it is glycosuria. Now, these two are indicative of a disease called diabetes mellitus. Now, diabetes mellitus is simply called as the sugar. Now, these two, when you check the blood or check the urine, if you find these ketone bodies and the glucose in excess, then that means the patient might be having this this diabetes, which is simply called as the sugar. It's a kind of autoimmune disease. Then all these will be the different disorders which can be come across during this excretion. Now coming to the next one, when the kidneys fail as well as the hemodialysis also cannot be done, then we only have one process which we can do, that is the organ donation. Now kidney transplantation can be done, but it is a difficult process because the body has to accept that foreign organ from somebody and the blood has to match and that particular foreign kidney has to settle in the patient's body. Now generally the kidney transplantation or the kidneys are taken from very close relatives so that they have a match exactly for it. So for those patients where you cannot do anything about kidneys or hemodialysis, then the transplantation is the only way, and the people who generally donate are the closest relatives. Now this will be one of the ways we can escape. Now let's coming to the excretion in plants. So we understood that animals do have this process of excretion because they have to remove the nitrogenous waste. But plants, no nitrogenous waste are generally found like that, and for plants, now this is not a part of metabolism. So they don't have to excrete and it is not compulsory. It is not compulsory for plants that they have to excrete, but plants do excrete substances so that they want to remove that from their particular body. Now they all give it as what we call as the byproducts, the products which are actually useful to humans. Now the byproducts we are talking about will be the tannins, the dyes, the latex, and the renin. All these things will be given from all these tannins, dyes, latex and resins, all these will be given out from the body as a byproduct from the plant. We all know that vacuoles also excrete certain substances. So the excretory products are also stored in vacuoles. The excess sugars or excess salts, whatever are present, are all stored in vacuoles. And for plants, oxygen is also a waste product, because we all know that plants take in carbon dioxide and they give out oxygen. So for plants, the oxygen is a byproduct or a waste product. So all these particular products we come across in plants, but they are all not a part of the regular metabolism. They just do this because they want to remove the byproducts from all their bodies. Now in plants, these kind of substances are generally stored in the old xylem. So we all know xylem is a conducting tissue. So the old xylem tissues are the ones which actually store these kind of excretory products. So this is all about this particular topic, and let's see some questions. How does urine get the yellow color? So we already discussed about it. The yellow color is because of a pigment called the urochrome. Now this gives that yellowish color to that urine. Now why is the anticoagulant added while hemodialysis is being done? So that is because to prevent clotting of blood. So you cannot have clotting at that particular place. So it is to prevent the clotting of blood. And the third one is excretory substance necessary in plants. No, it is not necessary. It is just to remove the byproducts. It is just to remove the byproducts. Now, this is all about this particular session. So, with this, we come to the end of the first chapter, that is the life processes in biology. Next session will be the second one, that is the control and coordination. We are going to start the introduction of this particular chapter. So, that's all from our side, and thank you so much.